say, the market. How would that be? You know, that's the reality for over 10,000 children in Michigan. And to conceptualize that number, imagine 25 Boeing 747 jets with every seat full. And 46%, nearly half of the children, never get to reunite with their families, even though that's the goal. So these children experience lots of loss and trauma, and they need safe, loving homes to welcome them in. Did you know that 1/3 of foster families close their licenses every year? That stat begs the question, why? Because they get burnt out from dealing with children who have complex trauma. They need our support and our help. And I know this because we fostered and adopted Liana when she was 8, and we would not have survived without respite care. And so I just want to invite you to partner with us in this groundbreaking initiative and be part of this solution, this missing puzzle piece for foster, adoptive, and kinship care families right here in this city. And you can become a respite family, and if you do, you become licensed with us, and then you can have these children for 2 hours up to 5 days. And it's a low commitment, but it's making a huge investment in these children's lives. And Heart for Home also hosts events to support these families. So please considering supporting an event for $100 or more, or join us, help spread the word about it. And I'll stick around and answer your questions, and we can connect afterwards for more. And I have brochures here that I'll pass out too. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Any other public comment, please?
Hi, good evening. I'm Dan Leong. I'm with Lick Sweet Treats and Eats at 610 Broad Street. I have the contract for the ice cream concession stand for since last winter, and it was for a 3-year contract, of which, if you were here last week, it was terminated because you said that I didn't make payment. But the reason I didn't make payment was because I felt the contract was breached, whereas it specifically says in my contract, no outside foods at all times. And in my conversation with Greg and speaking with some others here, that you don't seem that you want to enforce the contract. So I like some clarification as to why you won't enforce what is in the contract. And that's the reason I would have gladly paid some amount or even the full amount, if we were able to rectify that. And so in the last week or so, I've had, not a lot, small percentage, but people have got to know me through the ice rink and through my past years as a beach concessionaire at Gene Clock, for example. People have come to my store and said, hey, they wish I was still at the ice rink. Well, it's not that I didn't want to be there. I would love to continue to be an asset there if I could. So I know, I believe your name was Commissioner Mark. I believe he said something about, you don't think that, we want to police people with the sandwich between hockey games. It wasn't so much the little foods in between a hockey game or something like that. It was the birthday parties or the skate, the skate rink that was rented out or whatnot, where a lot of the bigger sales were lost. If someone brought in 10 pizzas, well, hey, that's less money that I'm making at the concession stand. If I'm paying you a percentage, that means the less money I make, the less money you make. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from and why, I wish you weren't at some kind of discrepancy here. I wish we could have resolved it, but here we are. I'm upset that I'm not there. I mean, I have the storefront here downtown, but this time of year, business is next to nothing. I mean, certainly the ice rink would have helped me, supplement income that I'm not making there because I have a captive audience at the ice rink, or I don't here. So I just want to get some understanding as to if something is in the contract, then why can you not see to enforce what's in the contract? I'm not asking you or anyone to do anything different than what's not in the contract. I just want to say, I wish we could have worked things out. Thank you.
Thank you. I see another one back there.
Good evening, Tim Hanley, 817 Lions Park Drive. Today they tore a house down on First Street and Lions Park Drive. Excuse me. And the wind was blowing pretty strong and there were clouds going down the road, up the road, in my yard. Vedette's in Kevin's house, Cortez's next door, got coated. She would be here, but she had foot surgery. I'd like to see when a permit is made, put out for tearing a house down or a building down, that there's a requirement that they have water dousing the dust. I mean, I had crap in my backyard and I'm kitty corner, middle of the block, 817 Lions Park. And I don't understand it, but they're tearing houses down at Lions Park Drive or the beach area quite a bit now. And I haven't seen, you know, I haven't been around to see if any damage was done down there, any house coatings were shared with other people, but I'd like to see something change there.
Okay.
Don't know what that was in the air. They said evidently that any asbestos that was in the house was taken out, but if it had lead paint or whatever, it could be in my backyard now. So,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move along to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda include regular meeting minutes of Monday, November 18th, 2024, special joint meeting minutes of Monday, November 18th, 2024, invoice and tax disbursements, new board appointment, 2025 poverty exemption guidelines, 2025 fireworks, right-of-way and cemetery mowing contract, fertilization and weed control contract, salt truck repair, high service pump number 3 rebuild, and category B grant MDOT contract. What is the pleasure of the commission?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I support it. All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Binkley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Ulrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes. Okay, that moves us along to item number 15, which is audit report, June 30, 2024.
So Jamie Wilkie from Lauterbach and Amen, is that how you pronounce it? Amen. I knew it wasn't right. Is here to give us our preliminary findings.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. This evening, we provided a packet presentation to take 150 pages of an audit and hopefully whittle that down to a few key takeaways. So I did meet this afternoon with the Finance Committee in detail. We reviewed the audit and happy to report positive feedback from that meeting, and we'll kind of highlight some of the key takeaways as well. The first page of that presentation indicates that we have issued what we call an unmodified or clean audit opinion. That is the highest level opinion that any auditor can issue each year to any local government. That means that the financial statements as presented are materially correct. As part of that audit process each year, we are also required to take a look at the city's overall internal control environment. So we are looking at policies, procedures, workflow, segregation of duties, all of those things that the auditors like to see in place to have a comfort level with the city's controls. And I'm happy to report we had no findings related to that testing. So truly the cleanest opinion that the city can each year. As part of the audit, we are required each year to issue 2 additional letters that are highlighted here on this slide. The first of which is what we call our SAS 114 letter. This is really required communication when we have issues or exceptions in our testing. So things like disagreements with management, potentially journal entries that management refuses to post. Again, we had no such findings, so this is really standard language saying that everything we expected related to the audit did in fact transpire in accordance with how we would expect it to. The second letter we issue each year is what we call our management letter. This is our opportunity to communicate with management a variety of topics. Those could be new standards that are coming down the line, which we do have 3 that we reviewed this afternoon in detail, as well as best practice recommendations. So those might be policy recommendations, ways to kind of strengthen what's happening within the city operations. Again, not an internal control related finding, but really more a best practice recommendation. So we did issue a final draft of that management letter and reviewed it in detail with the committee earlier this afternoon with a few recommendations related to those categories going forward. High-level results then for the financials begin on the next slide. The city's governmental funds, so this would be all the non-enterprise activity of the city, did in fact record an increase in fund balance for the year to the tune of about $2 million. And as the final audit report is distributed, I've provided page number references for the commission, so you're able to cross-reference those back. The general fund itself did have a positive operating year as well. Fund balance increased about $1 million. Ending fund balance represents about 6 months of operations for the city. That is very common kind of threshold that we see. We do work with about 125 municipalities each year, and 6 months seems to be that kind of target that you seek. The city's enterprise funds, so that includes the city's sewer, water, city water, and marina funds, also did have positive operating results this year. In total, all 4 funds contributed about $4 million to overall equity or the value of the city. I did want to point out a couple of bigger ticket items as far as changes in significant transactions or activities for the year. That's covered on the next slide. Our first topic is capital assets. The city engaged in significant capital asset investment throughout the year to the tune of about $15.3 million. Anytime we're adding new assets, the equity or the value of the city increases at the same time. So that's where we're seeing some of the positive results we discussed previously. On the long-term debt side of the equation, the city did pay down $300,000 in general obligation debt during the year. But because of the new investment in capital assets, we did see the new debt coming onto the books this year. So that's typically dollar for dollar as you've gone into long-term financing to pay for those long-term assets. So you will see that the revenue bonds that are reported did increase to about the same tune as those new assets that were acquired. Pension and other post-employment benefit, which reflects retiree healthcare costs, or what we call OPEB. We have provided that the ending liability for the employee's pension plan is about $7.1 million. That actually reflects about 91% funded. So that plan is very well funded. We reviewed in detail some of the transactions related to both of those plans. And then the OPEB liability continues to come down fairly significantly year to year. And that now is sitting at about $1.6 million. The next slide, just very high level, provides an overview of the diversification of the city's governmental fund revenue. Similar to many other municipal entities, you'll see that taxes do in fact kind of cover just over half of the city's operations. The rest of those are kind of diversified or split between things like state shared revenues, charges for services, fines, and investment income, et cetera. We look at the expenditures for the city's operations. Again, these are our governmental funds, so this is all non-enterprise activity. You'll see, not surprisingly and very common from municipality to municipality, that public safety typically wins the award from a department level cost perspective. You'll see that capital outlay, as I indicated, was fairly significant in that investment in new capital assets this year as well, and that was to the tune of about $5.5 million. Other departments kind of coming in split in the pie there, including general government, public works, economic development, et cetera. And so, overall, that's really kind of typical what we see as far as where those costs are going each year. The next slide provides fund balances in our governmental funds. So total fund balance ended the year at about $23 million. Again, that's split across multiple operating funds of the city. The vast majority of that green segment, or I'm sorry, the orange segment is actually restricted fund balance, meaning these are things that as revenue comes in, we have really restricted requirements of how we can spend those dollars down. That does make up the vast majority of the city's overall equity or fund balance in these funds. Much of that relates to the road funds, so revenues that are restricted to the road funds. The next two slides provide a little bit more detail on both the general fund and the enterprise funds. Just a couple of items here to point out. That fourth column provides actual results for the year. You'll see change in fund balance of $1,043,000. So that is really the overall profit within the general fund for the fiscal year. It did exceed budgetary expectations. And you'll see that revenues outpaced budget by about $667,000, and expenditures actually came in under budget by about $576,000. So those two combined really equate to that $1 million overall positive result for the year. And as I said, the next slide provides a bit more detail on the city's enterprise funds. Whenever we talk about enterprise funds, we tend to focus on operating income loss. So are the charges that are being charged actually covering, the true cost of operating each of those enterprise funds? So that's the very kind of center line in that chart. You'll see sewer and water had a operating surplus. And then the city water fund and the marina fund actually have an operating deficit. That kind of story is very similar to last year's results as well. And lastly, we provided a bit more detail on the pension obligation and the other post-employment benefit obligation. Just something to note here, the city does not pre-fund retiree healthcare or OPEB. So that's why you're seeing a 0% funded. This is not a bad thing. Most municipalities don't pre-fund this. Typically, the approach is kind of pay as you go, meaning as you have folks on the plan that qualify, you pay their costs each year as time goes on. And here's where you'll see the percent funded for the employee retirement system is just shy of 91% for the fiscal year. I do want to mention as well, I certainly want to thank the finance staff. I know Ben, finance director, is unfortunately unable to join us this evening due to sickness. But I told the finance committee this afternoon, he really did an outstanding job preparing for the audit. He was very responsive. The team was very accommodating. The auditors ask for a lot, so it is a lot to go through the audit. And I certainly want to give him kudos tonight for all of his hard work in preparing for the audit.
I certainly want to echo that. I think the world of Ben and his team, but we've also just been thrilled with Jamie and her team. So it's been a really great relationship.
Thank you. Good. And certainly happy to open it up for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
We asked a lot of them during the committee meeting earlier, so I'm questioned out.
Yeah, no, I was very pleased with, the presentation that Commissioner Sorolla and I got earlier this afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening.
Quick question.
Yes.
This is your first year,
This
this
is our
company's
first
with
year
us.
auditing the city.
Do you
Yes.
have access to past years, and do you look at the findings that were found in past years and kind of assess for that during this audit?
We do, yeah, typically. Every audit firm, that's a little bit subjective as far as what qualifies for certain categories of findings. But typically, we like to approach a first-year audit as kind of, we are the fresh set of eyes. And so we're not only looking for like true compliance with internal controls, but the ability to give some feedback on best practices that we see in the industry. I know we have a policy recommendation, and it's not that it's required. It's something that, we see other municipalities have in place. And so kind of sharing that information back and forth with the team.
Mhm.
Yes.
Because I think I remember in past audits, there was something about I don't remember the exact specific checks and balances. So those things that you would specifically look for that and make sure that's
Yes.
still.
Exactly. And that would go back to the internal control testing. So
Okay.
it's possible that they had some kind of finding related to that. We are seeing it more frequently because if departments aren't fully staffed, you don't have perfect segregation of duties. But in some
Mhm.
regard, it's sometimes out of your control because you have limited folks in the department. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Well, I wanted to ask Mike and Michael, because you guys have been involved in it and you said you had a lot of questions. Is there anything in particular maybe that stands out to you that you want to, say to us about it or not?
I
really?
don't think so. There was just a couple of fund balances. We talked a little bit about the marina.
That's what I was just going to ask about. Okay.
Losing money, which didn't seem appropriate. It's happened in the past years.
Yeah.
Emily and I talked about it quite a bit after. We're going to address that. Emily sits on the board
Okay.
of the, so we're going to ask a few questions and point that in the right direction. So
Okay. That was going to be my only question, was the city
That was the
water
one
and
that stuck out to us as
Okay.
well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And there's no action on this. We're just receiving this
Just
report.
receiving.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. That moves us right along to item number 16, establishment of Oprah District.
So I think Andrew Hahn from Cornerstone Alliance is going to join us, and got yet another presentation to pull up.
Do I open public hearing right now?
Andrew,
Andrew, is this
do
the
you-
public hearing
Yeah.
portion that I need to open up right now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, thank you.
do you have a presentation for this one or not yet?
I do. This is the one that I'm sorry, that I
It's okay.
gave
I have many
last meeting. I was going to give the
presentations.
same one.
Uh-huh.
You
Yep.
let me know.
I got it. It's all happening.
Not that one.
Oh, good.
It looks good, though.
She gets to give that one.
All right. In that case.
It is the Oprah Act overview.
Mhm. And you sent it to me for the last meeting? Okay. Okay, I got it.
Right. There it is. No slideshow view, huh?
I'm having some technical difficulties. It looks great on my computer.
It's great
It is
here.
not going to full
That's all right.
presentation.
Well,
mode.
I'm
I
gonna try and go
apologize.
through this fairly quickly. Again, this is the same presentation that I gave last meeting, and obviously everyone on the dais was here, and I think a lot of the same audience was here too. So gonna give a quick overview of the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act. Next slide. So first, tax abatements generally. Tax abatements limit the rate of growth of taxes on a project for a set number of years. So this lowers project costs. It makes projects that might otherwise be infeasible possible. It should be guided by that but-for principle, meaning that the project would not be possible but for the abatement. And because of that, there's some steps within the law that if you've started the project before the district has been granted, that you can't even get the abatement. There's a bunch of different types. There are industrial facilities exemptions. That's one that we have worked with employers and property owners here to get through with the support of the commission in the past. Neighborhood enterprise zones, commercial facilities, commercial rehab, and the one we're talking about today, which is the Obsolete Property Rehab Act, or OPRA. Next slide. Just another basic on the win-win of a tax abatement. So that red line represents the taxes that the community is getting right now. So the choice is continue to get that amount, that lower amount, and not grant the abatement, and the project doesn't happen, or grant the abatement, and for some amount of time, depending on what the commission would grant on any specific project, it's a lower amount, and then when the abatement's done, the city then gets that shot in the arm of the increased assessment and the increased taxes. Next slide. I'm not going to read every single bit of this because it's very dense, but I think it's still important. So the OBRA Act of 2000 offers property tax exemptions for commercial housing properties that undergo rehabilitation. It aims to support urban revitalization and reduce blight in qualified local units. St. Joseph is a qualified unit. And those can be approved for a term of 1 to 12 years as determined by the local unit. So next slide. So those buildings have to be contaminated, blighted, or functionally obsolete. In the case you're going to hear about a little bit more later, that is a functionally obsolete building. It's a building that was built as a library, no longer is used for that purpose, was later an office building, and is no longer suitable for that purpose. It's going to be converted to a hotel. This allows the municipality to freeze that taxable value. They can be transferred to a new property owner. They can be revoked if the project doesn't make the progress or meet the requirements. And I think that's a really important one so that you're checking in, you understand the project, and they're not just a blank check. They provide that incentive for a developer to make significant improvements on a building without increasing the taxes right away. So they give a little bit of breathing room to get the business up and running and make sure that things are, kind of ironing out the kinks. And it restores a building to productive use. So these can be done on buildings that are changing use, a building that maybe has been vacant for years. So to qualify, it's got to be in a district. That's what this first part of the hearing is about tonight, is setting that district. It can be a single parcel, which is what's being asked for tonight. They've got to be a commercial or a commercial housing property. They have to have been deemed obsolete by the assessor. That step has happened. They have to meet those guidelines, including not starting the rehab, which hasn't happened. They have to increase commercial activity, create or retain employment, revitalize an area, or increase residents. And the rehab wouldn't be possible without the receipt of the exemption. That's the whole key to this. And of course, the applicant can't be delinquent in taxes related to that facility. Next slide. I am not going to read all of that because it's a lot of repeating of what I just said. Go to the next one. So again, the qualified local government sets up the district, can be one or more parcels. You have to get the district going. That can happen either by, in this case, it was a petition from the property owner. A city could set up a whole district of, a square block if they wanted. They have to have written notice, public hearing. Those steps have all been met. And then tonight, potentially adopting a resolution in support of the district. Next slide. Now we're talking a little bit about the process for the actual certificate for the project. Very similar. Come in, they talk about the project. You're going to hear about that in just a little bit. And there's some other steps after this, some before that have already happened. All the other taxing units have to be notified, so you're being good partners. And then after it's approved, it goes to the state and is kind of put through one last check and approved within 60 days. I think that might be about it. Yes. And then again, just the community benefits, promotes the rehab of buildings that are obsolete or blighted. It encourages significant capital investments that ideally will serve to attract additional investments in the area, can attract redevelopment projects to provide a greater tax base, and then retain jobs or create jobs and really promote architectural excellence. So I think you're going to hear a little bit about that, about this project in particular. One thing I did want to remind you all of is that we talked about moving forward with this project in a timely manner, but also taking the time as we get into the new year to really think about policy for all these specific tools so that the next time one comes along, that there is criteria in place and a vision for how to use them. So that's something that Cornerstone is happy to help the city with if there's a desire to do that. I think that's it for this. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Nope, I think you explained it really well last time as well, so.
We had a little bit of a new audience, so wanted to go over it again. Thank you. So now we're moving into the resolution part.
Yes.
And that's,
No,
Now we're moving into the public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
yes, sorry.
okay.
It's okay.
So we will open up a public hearing at 6:37 PM. Do I do anything with that?
We can just see if anyone wants to comment.
Okay. Hearing the presentation, do we have any public comments? Nothing. How about any city commissioner questions, comments? Okay, I suppose we close the public hearing.
You need a motion for that?
Yes.
Sure. Let's
I'm-
do that.
I move to close the public hearing.
Support?
Right. Any public comment on the motion? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Olbrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla.
Yes.
All right, that closes the public hearing at 6:38 PM. That moves us along to the next item, which is resolution to establish Oprah District 500 Main.
So after holding that robust public hearing and considering the information that's been presented, the commission is invited to vote on whether or not you're comfortable adopting a resolution to establish an obsolete property rehabilitation district for the parcel as identified, 500 Main Street in St. Joseph. A resolution to adopt the district must be based on a finding that the parcel of land or portion of land within the district is indeed an obsolete property as defined by PA 146 of 2000.
Okay. So this is our time for questions specifically on the property.
Specifically on the district, establishing a district, because the next two agenda items, it's really hard to distinguish, but it's actually about the property. The district is just the property. So it's a little confusing,
Yeah.
but they are
Yeah.
different.
It's a very
District
specific
now.
thing.
Yes.
Property next.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I move to adopt the following resolution to establish an obsolete property rehabilitation district for the parcel and land identification as 500 Main Street, St. Joseph.
Support.
Any public comment on the matter? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Olbrich.
Yes.
Great. Now that moves us along to the public hearing on request for Oprah exemption certificate for 500 Main Street.
So what I'm thinking is that we will open the public hearing, and then I think we have someone who might want to give a presentation as part of the public hearing. Does that sound reasonable?
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to open the public hearing or the mayor?
I
just
think so.
calls it?
Same as before.
I just opened it. Didn't do it.
Just open it.
Open it. So I'll open public
Yeah.
hearing again, starting at 6:41 PM. Presentation.
Yes. So
Now we have.
nice
that.
and smooth. Let's see if I can get this presentation up. It is not working well tonight. I'm so sorry, Shannon. Give me just a minute. Here it
Can
is.
you
We
hear me?
still hear. Yes.
We can.
Yes.
I don't know if they can.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay.
And you can have as many of these as you deem necessary. It's like, there's not a limit to how many in an area or anything.
Typically, you would, if you were considering many,
Right.
you would be thinking strategically about certain areas. You don't have large swaths of the city that
That are
Like
like
these.
this, yeah.
Okay, I'm Shannon Kuchek, and myself and my husband out there, John Ken, are the new owners of 500 Main and the library project. It's a beautiful building, but I wanted to give you guys an update on what's going on there and what it will bring to the community. So, like I said, we feel it's one of the most historical landmarks of St. Joe. And so if you are trying to do things right, we found that there are no shortcuts. And so that's why we're here. So right now, well, I'll show you the design, but it has 6 hotel rooms and there's a central lobby. There will be 650 very small speakeasy style lounge in the lower level. Of course, there'll be 80 bathrooms. There'll be a small breakfast counter just for the hotel guests. Those 2 areas will be separated. There will be a rooftop deck for guests and
hopefully in the future, small events. There will be a north side brick patio where you can see the water from that patio. We are required to have an interior elevator. We have 3 entrances and stairs. We're now having to put the stairs off the back of the building, for exit and entrance reasons, and a sprinkler system. So quite a lot of things going on there. So here's the design of the building. You could see if anybody again is concerned about the architecture, we are trying to preserve as much of the architecture of the building as possible. And so if you're familiar with the building, when you enter, you can see those 5 rooms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The divisions are right there. And there's a common little lobby, and there'll be a little wine closet or whiskey closet in there. We do have an ADA room right off the elevator. And then, like I said, in the basement, you'll have the lounge and little breakfast area. So overall, should I go to the next slide? And as you guys know, we see it more as it's a hotel, but it's almost like a museum to St. Joe. I mean, it's really about getting people to know about St. Joe, and we're trying to highlight everything about it, including community activities and just kind of celebrating the city. So whereas in the beginning, we thought this was going to be a $300,000 project, it's going to absolutely be probably $600,000 or more. Elevators are $100,000, and sprinkler systems, and it's just a lot. But we're still excited about it and want to move forward. So that's why we're here. We can go to the next slide, I think. Is there another slide?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Any questions about like the layout there? I think I already described that. I think we can go to the next slide. I think we've kind of been through this, but Andrew, should I just go talk you through? Okay, so the building is functionally obsolete. We have tried a number of avenues to try to get other types of funding or credits. We can't get historic tax credits because we're making too many modifications to building with elevators and bathrooms, and I tried. No. I made it through the first stage, and that was about it. And once they heard more bathrooms. From what I understand, the MEDC they're not really super excited about hotels, so we don't qualify, and our project is not large enough to get all these credits and other things that you hear about going on, that we just don't qualify. So what's this increased tax base at the, I do, we're going to ask for this, but when we bought the building, we purchased it and our taxes did double right away. And so we are asking for this just to kind of stop the bleeding, for the, to give us some opportunity to get the business going. And we want it to stay there. We don't want it to be something where we open it and like 5 years later, we go, oh my gosh, we can't do this. It's just too much. So we want it to be there for years and years to come. And we're, like I said, super excited about it. So with a little bit of an impact, if you have 6 rooms and say on average your occupancy is 60 to 70%, you got to think, there's going to be like 1,500 room nights. And these are people that may have never been to St. Joe or know about everything it has to offer. And conservatively, if we do a little math, the estimate of what it could bring to the community, and I think this is actually very small, it would be like $225,000 a year to local businesses. But I think it just goes much further than that. Like, there's people come here and you don't know if they end up living here, or there's just much more to this than just money. Any others? Any questions about the project or the building, or?
Do you have an expectation of when the work would be complete?
With the Oprah, they asked for an estimate, and we want it to be done by fall, end of summer.
Fall of
Oh, wow.
25?
Probably August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the items that you listed, things that you're going to incorporate into the final design, those are the things that were listed by the assessor as things that made the building obsolete. Because there, in her note, it was, there's XYZ reasons that this building is obsolete. Those are the things that are being corrected with
Yeah,
the,
so it's a great question because even though that investment is, over $600,000, there's a lot of things there that we won't get back in the value of the building
Right.
either. I mean, there's heat now, we're just upgrading the heat. There's windows now, so you can keep on going. They're not really like improvements that bring great value, but we have to do them because the building has deteriorated, and so I don't know if I answered your question,
Yep.
but
all the things that you had listed that you're going to upgrade. Those are the things listed in the letter that deemed the property obsolete by the assessor.
yeah,
Okay.
just the,
Some of them.
and the overall
not the elevator.
condition of the building.
Yeah.
And it
Right.
doesn't, it can't function really as anything other than like an office space. And even with that, it's not an efficient building by any means. There's a lot of things that need to be done there.
Andrew, when does the abatement start? Does it start when the project's complete or does it start as soon as it's granted? When does it start?
Mickey had said it wouldn't kick in until 2026.
Okay. If the completion was in 25, or does that have nothing? Okay,
It's starting with 2026.
okay.
Okay.
So I think one of the neat things about it is, to your point, it could be an office space, but then it's not shared with the public. Because
Mhm.
it is kind of like a museum, and it is an
Yeah.
iconic building in St. Joe, and the use that you've selected, I think is fantastic. It checks a lot of boxes of things we're trying to do in St. Joe.
Mhm.
Plus it allows people to experience that building that might have never had the opportunity to go inside of it.
Right.
So in that regard, I think it's a great use for the property.
Side note, we're buying back a lot of the original books from the original library and then bringing them back
Cool.
to the old library.
Mhm.
Right.
Nice.
So we have like a two-part question, right? A, it's will we approve it? And then B, it's for the number of years.
How many years? Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so I think if you're ready to move to that conversation, we can close the public hearing and then do that as part of the next agenda item.
Okay. How about any more questions, comments about the presentation?
Thank you.
Thank you. How about a motion?
I move to close the public hearing.
Support?
Any public comment?
At last, I have a public comment. Someone has their phone left here. Okay. I'm the most affected property owner because I'm immediately across the street. I've known these people for a number of months now. They're very sincere. They're very grounded. What they say is what they do. These are exactly the kinds of things that we're trying to accomplish, in this town. You've gone a big step in terms of what you've already passed in terms of creating the district and everything else. And I think you can see by these plans, this is marvelous. I think this will be a welcome addition to our community, and I'm going to enjoy living across the street.
Very
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
awesome.
Great.
Any other public comment? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Overy,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Wonderful. That moves us now to resolution to approve the Oprah exemption certificate at 500 Main Street.
Correct. So I can read this quickly if helpful. After holding the public hearing and considering all information presented, commissioners will consider whether the request meets the criteria of PA 146 of 2000 and if it supports the request. If so, the city commission will consider the timeframe for the exemption. If the city commission favors granting the exemption for less than 12 years and wants to offer the option of extending the certificate term in the future, the factors, criteria, and objectives necessary for an extension must be stated in the resolution and listed on the certificate. If the city commission does not favor extending the certificate in the future, it should state that the certificate will not be extended in place of the criteria statement. The city commission will then vote on whether to approve the following resolution to approve an obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate for the property commonly identified as 500 Main Street in St. Joseph. If the commission does not support the request for the Oprah exemption certificate, it should vote to disapprove the resolution.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And this is something that we could start with a lower number of years and always extend it at that time.
That's my,
Oh, we don't have to say that now. I thought it sounded like.
I think we do have to make a determination now. My understanding is you can set a certain number of years now, and as that end date approaches, you could extend.
Do we have to establish the criteria for the extension now as well?
Yes, I believe so.
And the criteria
right.
could be the things spelled out in that obsolete letter, things that were, these are the things listed that were wrong that need to be corrected. And we want to make sure that those things are corrected, like they are saying they're going to be corrected.
For sure, for sure.
Can you speak to how often this happens and how often they do the 12 years or what the conditions usually are?
I would say that they're pretty rarely granted for a shorter period of time.
Mm.
Also, the estimates suggest that it's a very modest amount that would be abated. So I don't have that in front of me.
$2,256 a year.
So spread over 12 years, it certainly helps, but I mean, they're.
It's an estimate,
Yeah,
but
they're $1 million into the project, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, as part of the Oprah district, there's already a clause for if it's not being used for the purpose they said they were going.
yes,
That could be,
correct.
Yeah.
So
We don't have to include that in.
if that's the concern, I don't think we need to do a shorter term for that reason if there's already that protection built into the whole concept of an Oprah. So I'm personally comfortable with the 12.
Andrew, how do they calculate the value of the annual abatement, not knowing what the property is going to be worth in 12 years?
Again, this is an estimate at this point. So I'm not an assessor. Our assessor or the city's assessor has been very engaged in this project, and I think is pretty confident with that estimate, but you'll know moving forward. So I can't imagine, I would be shocked if it were more than 25%.
One way or
If the
the other.
abatement shifted by any more than 25% one direction or the other. So again, I think this does get to the idea of setting policy, right? It could be that you'll consider X number of years if it's, $500,000 or more or whatever you say. So I think this one's a little bit of a learning process. It's it's a project that I think everyone has felt good about. And again, is a modest amount as well.
Yeah, that was my concern because the abatements that I've been part of since I've been on the commission, nothing was even approaching this long. At the same time, the value of the abatement is quite small compared to what we've seen traditionally. So I was prepared to recommend something less than 12 years, maybe significantly less, but understanding the value of the abatement, I now lean towards
The whole 12.
the whole
yeah.
12.
And it's not setting a precedent. It's like saying, now that you did this for them, you have to do this. So.
This
we
is
can-
about this
Yeah.
project and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'd argue, especially with the property and the use, this is a very unique project.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know where else we'd see this in town.
Yeah.
And the commitment to preservation, I think is really key. So in that regard, I would be in support of the full 12 years.
Our approval or disapproval, if we approve it, it still has to go to the state tax commission for final approval, correct?
It does. I think the team is pretty confident that all the, I's are dotted, T's are crossed. So before it gets there, those rarely get there. Sometimes there's a technical catch that they'll get, that a community's missed something, but I think we feel pretty good that it's there. And those are
And-
guaranteed to be, they have a 60-day turnaround max.
And go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that with our approval, work can begin even before state approval is granted.
Oh, okay.
And did I read that the state only approves 25 a year?
I do not recall that. So
Does that sound familiar to anybody?
That's
No.
in regards to something else. That's in regards to school education tax.
Yeah, okay.
Certain
Hmm,
more abatement.
Gotcha.
Got it. That's an additional thing on top of what we're talking about. So that-
additional catalytic projects, I think, can go to the Michigan Strategic Fund for review. So
But these are kind of endless. They could do it over and over again, the certificate that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do we think?
I moved. I move to approve the resolution to adopt the obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate for the property commonly identified as 500 Main Street, St. Joseph, Michigan, as presented.
Support.
Any public comment on the matter? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Binkley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Olry,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes. Thank you very much.
That.
Thank you for the bold move. We're looking
Yes.
forward
Yeah,
to
we're
it.
excited. It's great.
For sure.
We're excited to see what comes of it.
So, St. Joe Public Schools easements, Lori Schmidt is also sick. Our team is dropping like flies, knock on wood, but Tim is going to pinch hit.
I'll do my best to fill in here. So at the last city commission meeting, Kalen Construction was awarded a project to complete the storm sewer repair and sanitary sewer installation work on Dickinson Park, and that's in conjunction with the improvements being completed by St. Joe Public Schools. The approval was made contingent on obtaining the easements for the work on St. Joe Public Schools property. And so tonight, we're requesting approval of those easements in order to proceed with the work. Now, we do expect the school board to approve these same easements at their meeting on December 16th. Attorney Schmidt's been working with their attorney, and everyone's in agreement with the language.
And this is a formality that needs to be done to do that work.
Yes, in the past, there were a lot of what's called prescriptive easements where they just kind of built it, and then when it was there, if, I guess the words the attorneys use, if it's open and notorious, then we have an easement. But the thing is, it doesn't really spell out who's responsible for what. And if we're going to expend public dollars, then I want an easement so
Right.
that we know what we're getting ourselves into. And it's fair to the property owner too, because then they know what our responsibilities are as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Tim, I appreciate the attention to detail with wanting to do it the right way.
Just leave that part out.
Thank you. It adds time for sure, but it's the way to do it.
Thank you.
I move to approve the sanitary sewer easement, storm sewer easement, and temporary access agreements with the St. Joseph Public School District, subject to minor changes approved by the city attorney and city engineer, and authorize the mayor and staff to execute the documents.
Support.
Any public comment on the matter? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Olry,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Tim. On to item number 21, Cornerstone Alliance Annual Update and Contract Renewal. Back up.
Well, gosh, thank you so much. I feel like I've been hogging the spotlight here,
trying to earn your
both
money.
tonight and recently, but it's a real honor to be here. So I think Emily is teeing up the presentation. I'll just say again, it has been a real pleasure to get a chance to get to know this community and work hand in hand for me. It's been an awesome couple of years. I feel really proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish and moving some of these things forward, like the redevelopment ready community certification. That is poised to happen potentially by the end of the year. Everything has been submitted to the state, so they're going through their checklist. But again, it's been great. Proud of the work. I'm going to talk just very briefly about a few of the things that we've worked on this year and have happened. You've heard me talk about a lot of these just in the last couple meetings. Go ahead, Emily. There's our sharp looking team. The guy in the bottom left accepted from that maybe, but we're so honored to be able to serve St. Joe and the county. We're a nonprofit investor driven organization. So the support that we get from the communities and the employers and our other benefactors is so critical to us to be able to have that staff capacity. And in the case of this year, actually be able to write some checks to support projects with our resources, which is a real honor. We are, oops, I was just going to blather on, but that's fine. We're focused on increasing employment opportunities, private sector capital investments, and local tax base in Michigan's Great Southwest. A lot of the things that we do, a lot of the work we focused with the city on this year has been about helping the city get ready for investment and for development. So I feel great about what's coming. Go ahead. So I'm going to talk real quickly about the facade program. I'm happy to present that that just wrapped up with our final project getting done. That one's been about an 18-month program. We're really happy about the impacts of it. Just again, speak a little bit about the economic development and community marketing strategy, and then the Court Place Plaza project, which is poised to launch finally here in January. Go ahead. One more. So just a quick snapshot. That's one of the facades we're proudest of course, Cafe Tosi. The program wrapped up just this month or last month in November. The 75,000 that were committed by the city, the DDA, and Cornerstone resulted in nearly $400,000 of total investment. So really impactful opportunity to leverage your funds and get more investment in the community. The economic development community marketing strategy. We went through this in great detail, both when we first presented it and got to hear a lot about the data and taking really a data-driven approach to capturing some of that, that leakage, the retail leakage, and also the residential opportunities that are coming. The joint session that we had with the DDA, the Planning Commission and City Commission, I think was fantastic. And it was great to hear that those three bodies believe in the potential to bring 900 new units of residential here within the city, not just downtown, but within the city. So I'm very much looking forward to working with the team on figuring out how to, lower the barriers to that and make sure that we're getting sites ready and luring that development and broadcasting the opportunities that you have here in the community. We're a little less involved in the marketing strategy, but I think there were some great recommendations within that City Manager Hackworth and the team are now going to put into action. I talked about this project as well. We've been talking about it for far too long without moving on it, but we're very excited. So we conducted a charrette early this spring and have a great design that came out of that. And this project will launch in January. So as a quick reminder, City, DDA, and Cornerstone all contributed $75,000 towards this project. That will go into, what's it? Combined, sorry, for a total of $75,000. That will be matched through the Patronicity program, which is a Michigan Economic Development Corp program. It's crowdfunding. So the team is now working, our combined team is working to launch the website. That'll go live in January. We'll have really good, robust tools to help market that beyond and hopefully bring some additional investment in too. So we'll end up with about $150,000 to do some improvements to the plaza. There's a vision for something even greater that would stretch all the way back to Main Street. And I think we're optimistic that we're going to keep pursuing other grant opportunities and potentially with some of the funds that the DDA will have, be able to implement some of those bigger picture recommendations. This is really a dressing up. It is not a complete overhaul, but we want to get this space ready for events and be something that the community can come and use and program and will have an impact on those businesses in the area. I won't go into detail on it, but we're excited. We'll make sure that it's communicated out when that is live. That's not all we do though. So we've done a lot of other work that maybe flies a little bit under the radar. I'm going to hit on a couple things real quick. We helped with the process of looking at a new public works site, options and property, gave you guys the opportunity to vet that. That seems to be kind of on hold for the moment, but that's the kind of thing that we can do for our municipal partners. The residential market analysis was something that we commissioned above and beyond the economic development strategy, which I neglected to mention. Cornerstone paid for a quarter of that. So the state paid for 75% and we paid for the other quarter. So we thought it was important enough to invest our own money in to get you guys across that finish line and the RRC certification. We host events in St. Joe. We have our annual Flex event at Union Social, 200 plus people that come to that. We conduct our First Choice Tours, which is a program that we offer to employers that are trying to bring talent into the community. Lots of project-specific technical assistance. Business retention visits with existing businesses. That's something that we do throughout the year. We market out this community and the whole county on a national scale. I mentioned already the RRC assistance. We're there almost every week, rather every month at the DDA, helping kind of shape things around the edge, share best practices, and from our experience. We hosted ribbon cutting for you guys, which was great, celebrating the investment on Upton Drive. We do community tours with site selectors regularly when they're in town, and prospects when the state sends us someone to host that is interested in investing in whether it's in St. Joe or the county. You guys are always one of the gems that we show around, show off. We assisted with the development of the DDA TIF plan, so that's kind of waiting as soon as we get this other step going early in the new year, and we're so excited to launch that. Then you just saw us talk about the Oprah project. So what's next? I just threw a few things in this that we're optimistic about and hope to assist with moving into the new year. A lot of them are the recommendations out of the economic development strategy. So getting that TIF plan going for the DDA, considering what can be done with that Niles Road corridor, potentially relaunching the Brownfield Authority, really digging into the housing, and then also moving forward the request for qualifications in that community-led design process for one of the city-owned sites on Lake Boulevard. Continued support through our Women's Business Center for small businesses and our retention stuff. And we want to get out this year and do some business walks, which is a little bit different of an approach to doing retention visits, where we bring the whole team. You're implicated in this. We're going to talk to you about coming, Ms. Mayor. Yeah, you. So this is something that we often do. We'll bring the utility, we'll bring state partners, and let businesses in a certain area know that we're coming. And we come out, hear from them, hear what's going on, and then follow up. So it's kind of a new approach to doing retention. And we'd love to do that with you if you had some interest in it. So those are just a few of the things. Again, so grateful for the support and the ability to help move the needle with the community. We're very bullish about what's to come. So happy to answer questions if there are any.
Nope, very thorough. You've kept us abreast of everything, and
I'll try and stay
Oh,
away for a
grateful.
couple meetings. So
I'll jump in again to say what a fabulous partner we have in Cornerstone Alliance and in Andrew in particular. We've had a fabulous partnership for 2 years now, and I think we've made a great impact.
yes.
Well, before you even said anything, I was thinking that'd be a great thing for me to get involved in, so count me in on that too. And I know you're only presenting on the city of St. Joe, but I know I want to recognize you do a lot of work in all the surrounding communities as well, which is extremely important, because when we all do well, we do well too. So I want to thank you for the work you do here in St. Joe and beyond for our neighboring communities and everything like that. So
thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure to do it.
we don't have any motion on this?
Yeah,
We do.
We want to approve
The contract.
Yes.
Yep.
I move to approve and ask the city manager to execute the attached agreement with Cornerstone Alliance for calendar year 2025.
Support.
Any public comment on the matter? Okay, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Olry,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, item number 22, corrosion control treatment study contract amendment.
Oh, good, you have it.
Thought you were going to do it by memory.
I got one to work
Almost.
this time.
So corrosion control treatment study contract amendment. And by way of background, the next slide, back in 2022, Cornwell Engineering was approved by the City Commission to conduct a corrosion control study for the city. So the City of St. Joseph and the Southwest Michigan Regional Sanitary Sewer and Water Authority, both water systems were at that time and are now in compliance with the lead and copper rule. But the thinking back then was we had goals in terms of optimizing treatment. Eagle was recommending that systems with likely lead presence in their systems, that they conduct corrosion control studies. And then just this year, EPA updated the lead and copper rule. And if systems exceed the action level ever, they have to conduct a study. So our last level was 3 parts per billion. The limit is 15, but we have had back in 22 and 23 levels as high as 15 and 12 parts per billion. So those levels are coming down. And we thought it was proactive to go ahead and study corrosion control at the water plant. So
Before we get to that slide, would you go back? We wanted to determine also whether or not a treatment additive was needed, given that our results have been low and the lake has a natural buffering capacity with the calcium carbonate, the hardness, the alkalinity. So that was one thing. Also, the benefits in terms of reducing lead, copper, and iron corrosion. So if we did start adding a corrosion control chemical, of course it would reduce lead, but copper and then iron with all that old cast iron in our system would be one of the benefits. One of the concerns we had, though, was that if we start adding a chemical, it would have to be, if it was ever discontinued, the corrosion levels could go back up. So we had to be very careful. We had to get it right. So those are the reasons in the background behind commissioning the study. So next slide, please. So the study consists of 3 components. There's a desktop study. The desktop study, basically, we're collecting water samples in addition to what we do routinely at the water plant, at pH, alkalinity, hardness, but also Cornwell is looking at dissolved inorganic carbon, and they're looking at the various corrosion indices. So Cornwell is the consultant, and we are taking samples and sending them down to their headquarters in Virginia to look at those numbers. So the desktop study also compares what we're doing to analogous systems. So it looks at Benton Harbor, it looks at Grand Rapids. Can we learn something from them? And that's the analogous study. And then the desktop study, basically based on the water chemistry, based on analogous systems, they can recommend a corrosion control chemical. There are many. Many work, and there are some that would not work at all and in fact increase corrosion. So we need to be careful there. And that's one of the goals behind the desktop study. So another component is that Cornwell looked at scale analysis. You can see in the second photo up there, that is the cross-section of a lead pipe that was excavated from the 400 block of Main Street in St. Joe a couple of years ago. And there are distinct corrosion layers or scale layers on the pipe, and you can see the surface layers are dark brown, and then there's a second layer down below that, which is a tan color, and actually a third layer. And it's important to know what's in the pipe because there are certain forms of lead that are soluble and certain forms of lead that are insoluble. And the idea is to keep it insoluble so it doesn't dissolve into the water. And then thirdly, and what we're talking about tonight is the pipe loop study. And that study got underway just last year, where we are passing water through our lead pipes. So you can see this is a rig where pipe from Lakeshore Drive excavated from St. Joe. The white lines on that rig is actual lead pipe. And water's being coursed through that pipe, and it's mimicking customer usage. So there's a stagnation period. The customers don't use water at night, and then they use it for maybe an hour in the morning. And throughout the day, there are automatic valves that open and close on that rig to mimic that use. We are testing 24 tests per month per rig, so roughly 100 tests per month. And there are 4 rigs. Okay, next slide. Okay, in terms of objectives then, observe effects of adding an orthophosphate product. So orthophosphate was the recommended product coming out of the study done by Cornwell, the benchtop study. The current doses are on those rigs, 2 milligrams per liter, 3 milligrams per liter. Rig C is finished water, which is a scientific control. All we're doing is adding water to water there and doing nothing. And then rig D is 4 milligrams per liter. And those concentrations are arrived at, again, in consultation with Cornwell and Eagle, and that's approved by Eagle before the study even begins. So next slide, please. So significant dates, 8/21/23, the rigs were turned on and conditioning begins. So we're only adding water, and we're only doing it for about 10 months. And that pipe has been excavated again from the city. It's been thrown on the back of a truck. It's been taken off the truck. It's been cut and then installed at the water plant. So there's a lot of particulate lead that comes off of it. And that pipe has to be conditioned before we even add a chemical. 4/12/24, the ball valves loosened. They had to be tightened. We don't want that flow to ever continue unabated. That stagnation period is very important at night, and those periods during the day are very important. Mind you, if we continue to add water without cessation, the chlorine has an effect on the lead where it oxidizes it into a higher level, and it's insoluble. The problem is we couldn't consume that much water, right? Basically chlorine lowers or depresses lead levels because it pushes it into the insoluble state. And then in June of this year, testing phase implementation, the corrosion control treatment, the orthophosphate was added. Okay, next. So to date, after 6 months of dosing, orthophosphate appears to be effective at reducing lead at any dose. So at those 2, 3, and 4 milligrams per liter, orthophosphate is reducing the lead coming from the pipe. We're seeing a little bit of a precipitation of aluminum phosphate, which may be an issue in the distribution system. We're looking at that at this point. Further investigations will be conducted to reduce the impact, maybe lowering the dose. Seasonal variation is being observed in the rigs. Lead levels decrease with temperature in the winter, which is approaching now. Spring, summer temperature increases and lake turnover may affect lead levels. So we're looking at continuing the study through July 1st of next year to look at those seasonal levels. Okay, let's look at the data. So this is the data from all the lines. You can see the lead level on the far left. And again, these are these harvested pipes. So it starts so pretty high. And it's a pretty busy graph. And this is all 3 rigs along with the control rig. So let's go to the next slide. And this is rig A, 2 milligrams per liter. And you can see the vertical orange line is when the chemical feed is started. And the blue line on your far right is just the last update that the engineer Cornwell did before the graphs were produced. So you can see that there's a nice steady decline. There's a little bit of a spike there, a second spike. That's just particulate release as the pipe is stabilizing. Let's go to the next slide. And this is a little more amplified, but you can see the 3 colors are the 3 different pipes that are on that rig, and they're being fed the 2 milligram per liter dose. And let's go to the next slide. And this is 3 milligrams per liter. It's higher, and you see more peaks. And let's go to the next slide. And you can see more peaks very clearly here. And it looks like the lead levels actually rise above what they were initially. So 3 milligrams per liter is not a good idea. It eventually comes down to a really nice low level, but we don't want several months of elevated lead levels in the system. Let's look at the next slide. This is rig C with no dose, and you can see that to a certain extent it somewhat pacifies is the word we use for it, passivation. So the lead levels reduced, but only modestly. You can see a little bit of that little sink where it's very low, and that's where the valves were leaking, and you were getting the straight water with no stagnation period, and see how the lead level drops. But that's not sustainable, as we know. Let's go on to the next slide. This is rig C, or let's go to rig D. And this is 4 milligrams per liter. And to get better amplification, let's go to the next slide. And here it's even more pronounced than the 3 milligram per liter. We see that several peaks that are just after adding the chemical, and it finally settles out, but there again, it's very It is not a recommended dosage.
What was the
because
dose
of
in
that
A?
period.
What was the dose in Rig A?
This is 4 milligrams per liter.
Right, what was the very first
Two.
one?
The very first one
Two.
was 2.
Two.
And that was the one that showed just a couple of
Right.
little spikes.
Right.
So 4 milligrams per liter is also wasteful. It's just adding too much chemical. But this is the main reason here is that you have this very unstable, you're actually destabilizing your pipe for a number of months before the levels start coming down. So let's go to the last slide, I think. Yeah. So Cornwall Engineering was approved back in 22, as I had mentioned, $157,000. They have furnished amendment number 1 to continue the study, largely the pipe loop portion of the study. The bench top and the scale analysis are done. And we're looking at by next July 1st, that will end up at $212,460. So we're recommending that we extend the study. And any questions?
What are you expecting to find, Greg, that we haven't done already with another year of study?
We're looking at seasonal variation. So what is the effect of cold water? We just started in June.
Okay.
What is the effect of cold water? What is the effect of lake turnover? So with lake turnover, the total organic carbon, for instance, changes in the incoming water, and that has an effect on corrosion. The natural organic matter, as it were. So we want to look at the effects of that as it varies throughout the season. We just kind of have a snapshot right now from June until October, November, and we just like to see the variations.
And that would perhaps lead to a treatment plan that would vary throughout the seasonality of what we change with the water. We're expecting to see some changes.
I have not heard that we would vary the dose. I think we would maintain that dose at 2 milligrams per liter. Given that precipitate, maybe we might look at lowering that dose to 1.5 milligrams per liter on one of the rigs.
Okay.
Well, maybe this is a dumb question, but why are the rigs all different? Like, why was the blue one always higher?
I think it might, the blue is just indicating a pipe. So it might be just coincidence.
Okay.
So they've just selected colors for the pipe. The
Okay.
pipe's randomly selected. That might be a coincidence.
Right, if you just had one pipe, you wouldn't know if that was representative of all the differences we might see in our entire system. The fact that you have 4 different pipes gives you the
A
variability.
little bit of variability.
Sure.
The more pipes we test, the better the
you
data
have the-
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are those pipes pretty similar? Are they different ages, or do you have any way of tracking that?
I think they're pretty similar. They're the same diameter. They're the same. They're what we see all over the system. We're likely a Lakeshore Drive installed in the 30s, 40s. Tim?
Yeah.
So you would figure that they're installed about the same time.
And the desktop study and the scale analysis are complete. And you use that information with
Yes.
this? Okay.
Yes. So that's the information that we're using to determine that orthophosphate is the best chemical as opposed
Okay.
to, say, orthopoly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one last question, you said that this company benchmarks our results against other communities. Are other
Yes.
communities engaged in this testing with them as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Grand Rapids.
okay.
We went up 2 years ago and looked at Grand Rapids rigs, talked to the superintendent there. So they're working with, we're familiar with their system.
Right, and our system, our new system very much mirrors their system in Grand Rapids, does
Yes.
it not? Yeah.
Are they having similar results with the study that they're doing?
They're using poly mix, and they've been using it for years, and they're looking at other options, as I understand. So, it's hard to say, but yeah, it's Lake Michigan water.
Yeah.
Very similar chemistry. I'm not really, 2 years ago, I'm trying to think of what similarities were, but basically the water chemistry is very similar.
So are we the only ones doing this exact study that you're aware of?
GLWA is doing this, Detroit, Grand Rapids, I think Chicago. It's required in the state of Wisconsin, so I know there are a lot of communities in Wisconsin
yeah.
that are doing it, probably up and down the shore.
Yeah. Okay.
If and when we have the feed, it's pretty much in perpetuity, right? Don't stop.
Right.
Okay.
They're looking at, in terms of scientific research, if we do feed, how to stop feeding. So there are studies going on with that as well. And that's something that we could look into is on the rigs, stop feeding at some point. Yeah,
And eventually we want to have all these lead lines gone
yes.
and replaced. So this would just be, it'd be temporary until, but you're saying it would have to, even if we replace the lead lines, we'd have to still continue with the,
There's still said lead solder out in systems and homes and lead fixtures, so.
We have
I know,
gal,
Greg, you talked even more about this, but when the lead 2018 on copper came out, I was under the impression that if we had the phosphate or some similar chemical, it was gonna be really tough to stop.
To stop it.
So we want to make sure we get it right to begin with.
Okay. Thank you. Very thorough.
thank you.
all right. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Please consider. I would move to approve the corrosion control contract amendment 1 to the 2022 agreement from Cornwall Engineering of Newport News, Virginia, in the amount of $55,460 for extended study through July 1st, 2025 for the purpose of evaluating the effectiveness of corrosion control through a full 4-season study period, which will increase the contract fee from $157,000 to $212,460.
Support.
Any public comment? All right, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
Commissioner Sarola,
Yes.
Commissioner Overy.
Yes.
And now item number 23, ordinance approving contract with Benton Harbor JWWTP.
Okay. Again, this is a Lori Schmidt item, so I'm going to give an overview and then try to answer questions. It's going to be far more simplistic than our memo. So staff is requesting approval of a new contract to continue with the operation of the joint wastewater treatment plant, followed by an ordinance to adopt that. The city of Benton Harbor and St. Joseph co-own the plant, which also serves the surrounding townships through separate agreements. The city of Benton Harbor is considering a mirror agreement, and legal counsel for the cities and plant have coordinated their efforts so that the agreements meet legal requirements. The driver for this is to enable the joint wastewater treatment plant the ability to issue bonds for future improvements if they are needed. The plant was first operated in 1951. After those initial bonds were paid off, it has been in a position to pay cash or pay as you go for the improvements. But with all the competing infrastructure demands we have today, the plant staff desires the ability to issue bonds in the future in order to make future rate increases sustainable to our ratepayers. Obviously, like I said, there's a far more detail about the laws and how this has to work when you have two different municipal entities that own a plant. Normally, you don't have to have an ordinance for an agreement, but in order to bond, you have to have that ordinance in place. So I don't know if there are any questions. Like I say, I've been talking to Lori. She's been working on this for months. I mean, the coordination between the joint plan attorney and the attorneys at the city of Benton Harbor have been, and actually the bond counsel that we've hired that's been giving us guidance on the requirements. It's complex, and Lori's done a very nice job with it.
So the only thing I'll add, if you don't mind, Tim, is that there's an agreement that was in place for a long time and it lapsed. And so this is really just about establishing the same agreement. There's no change in the agreement or the leadership of the wastewater treatment plant. This is about making sure we have the agreement in place. Like Tim said, it does require an ordinance, which is, I think, unique from other contracts, but it's sort of standard reestablishment of what's there. And once we have that in place, it will allow us, should we choose to do so, to move forward with bonding.
So we approve the contract, then we approve the ordinance.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit there, we really have been operating under what we felt was extensions to the agreement, but they did not allow us to bond, because when the townships came on, every time we did that, there was verbiage in there that everybody was agreeing to extend out, say, 25 years. So, it's not like the plant's operating without any kind of agreement in place. It's just not in the right format now if we need to issue bonds going forward.
Thank you.
Okay. I move to approve the contract providing for the joint ownership, use, and operation of a jointly with the city of Benton Harbor, and to give the first reading to the ordinance approving a contract providing for the joint ownership, use, and operation of a sewage disposal facility jointly with the city of Benton Harbor as presented.
Support.
Any public comment? Abby, call the roll.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Binkley.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Aubrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now we need a second motion. For this.
First for the first reading of the ordinance,
I thought that was it.
but there's not a reading, an ordinance.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to read it again in January.
Put it.
Oh, there's an
Oh,
ordinance,
there are
there's an
two
ordinance
actions
underneath, yeah.
on here. My apologies.
Case.
Okay,
I
I move,
move-
go ahead, Michael.
All right. I move to give a first reading to the ordinance approving a contract providing for the joint ownership, use, and operation of facility jointly with the city of Benton Harbor as presented.
I support.
Public comment? Yeah, Abby, call the roll.
Commissioner Binkley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorolla,
Yes.
Commissioner Aubrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Thomas.
Yes. Okay, city manager comments.
Oh, how impressive is Greg Alimenti? I mean, I love when he gets up and presents and gets into the data, and I just want to pause for a minute to give him credit for all of his hard work. Quietly working away down at the water plant, just always impressive. I missed the tree lighting on Friday night, which was such a shame. But I got back in town in time for the holiday party on Saturday night, which was lovely. But as I walked out, I looked up the bluff and saw just how gorgeous it is. So kudos to Greg Grouthouse as well and his fabulous team. It looks lovely as always.
New staff? Can I introduce?
Well, I didn't put Kelly on the agenda, so I thought I'd do it formally in January. But we do have new staff, and our new staff members are great, and I will correct my mistake and have her formally on the agenda in January.
Welcome. All right, is that all for you? Okay, city commission comments.
Nope.
Nothing.
If I'm not mistaken, this is our last meeting of the year, so.
It is.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up, giving us your thoughts, giving us some stuff to approve and vote on.
Quiet? Yep, Emily already talked about Light Up the Bluff. I think Rain Dog Parade was also this weekend. I missed out on that. So if you all went, hope it was a good time. Santa is in town,
Oh,
I think, as well. So get your kids out there. And go enjoy downtown. It's really beautiful. There's lovely music. The planners look really nice. So thank you for all the staff for making our downtown look beautiful. Other than that, let's adjourn at 7:36 PM. See you next year.
I did go to Rain